And we're live. All right. So, hello everyone. Welcome to this week's series or edition of Men and Women for Others. Today we'll be talking about building connections in Worcester, and we have some wonderful student panelists as well as our own Marty Kelly, who will be leading the discussion. My name is Chris Holgan. I'm an associate director in the Office of Student Involvement, and I'm just here today to do a quick introduction of the program itself and really thank the chaplain's office and Marty for really putting this together. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Marty.
All right. Thanks, Chris. I appreciate that. Thank you to OSI for hosting this conversation as part of the series on Men and Women for Others and what that looks like at Holy Cross. I want to just first, before I make any comments, allow our student panelists to introduce themselves briefly, and then we'll turn back to them in a moment. But I want you to hear from them. So maybe Sly, if you don't mind beginning.
Hi everyone, I'm Sly Dwyer. I'm going to be a senior this coming year. I'm a history major, and this will be my second year as an intern with SPUD.
Hi everybody, I'm Emma. I'm also a rising senior for this year. I'm an English and political science double major, and this will be my first year as a SPUD intern, and I spent the last 2 years as a program director for the Canterbury Schools Big Brothers Big Sisters program.
Hi everyone, my name is Catherine. I am a rising senior as well. I will be SPUD's lead community organizing intern next year, international studies major with a minor in French and a concentration in gender, sexuality, and women's studies.
All right, thanks to all of you for being here, for being willing to share a little bit about your experience in SPUD and what we hope for in the year ahead too. So again, grateful to OSI for providing this platform for us to share a little bit about Men and Women for Others from the perspective of SPUD. We'll say a little bit more about what SPUD is, but I wanted to start by sharing a broader excerpt from the speech in which this phrase, Men and Women for Others, originally comes, because we don't often hear it in context. And that famous line comes from a speech which was made in 1973 by Father Pedro Lupe, the General Superior of the Society of Jesus at the time. And he was speaking to Jesuit alumni in Europe. And this is what he said. He said, "Our prime educational objective must be to form men and women for others. Men and women who will not live for themselves, but for God. Men and women completely convinced that love of God, which does not issue injustice for others, is a farce." And that's the context in which Men and Women for Others appears. And I highlight that last phrase, love of God, which does not issue injustice for others, is a farce. And that's a really strong statement. And I think it's a really important question to ask ourselves. Do we live this? Do we issue injustice? Do I do that personally? Do we collectively as an institution? And in this case, in student programs for urban development, are we an organization that issues injustice? Are we willing to be? And, Chris and I had talked about having this conversation weeks ago. And of course, lots has happened in our country since that time. And we wanted to, of course, provide a platform to talk about SPUD, what it is, and highlight some student experiences, and we will get to that. But I think it's really important to speak to this particular moment, and not just for a few minutes online with whatever words we can muster, which will be, I'm sure, insufficient, at least my words. But we really want to do this in sustained ways in SPUD, at Holy Cross. We have to confront and engage issues of racial justice, unless we be a farce, or our faith be a farce, as Rupe says. I know many of us have been sickened by the video of yet another African-American man being killed right in front of our eyes, in front of the nation. And we know George Floyd died not as a result of a rogue individual, as a sort of one-time thing, but really at the hands of a system in which we are all a part. in which we all participate. And the reality of this unjust system we've already seen laid bare from COVID-19 in recent months. So we've seen how this system works to disadvantage people of color in every facet of life, including, of course, healthcare. And that's all been laid bare even before George Floyd took his last breath. So I speak for myself and for Spud, I think, when we say, indifference at this time is not an option. If we really want to be men and women for others and include that phrase of Arube, who issue injustice for others, then we have to engage this issue. Men and women for others is a nice phrase. We throw it around a lot, but it really is a lot more than like holding doors open to each other on campus. That's really nice, but it goes deeper and it asks more, right? Father Brian Massengale, who's a professor of ethics at Fordham, says about the context of the United States specifically. He says, you can't get justice right if you do not get racism right. It's so intricately woven in the fabric of our unjust systems. We have to look at it. We have to get it right. So that task is all of ours. Even more so those of us who benefit and are privileged by the systems in place that prop up, inequality. And it's definitely an issue that Spud should not shy away from if our hope is to be, in solidarity with our neighbors in Worcester. So this is a time for us to demonstrate solidarity with, my colleagues at Holy Cross and students of color who face injustice head on, who carry at this particular time, I'm sure, combination maybe of fear, grief, pain, and who too often bear the burden of creating momentum for change, that it's somehow always on their shoulders to move the nation. But that really is, it's a collective weight I hope we all feel, that it's our task to move this conversation forward. So I want to just acknowledge this moment in which we find ourselves and commit Spud's, my own time and resources and Spud's energy to look head on at racial injustice specifically. So I want to just throw that out there and let anyone else who wants to speak to the particular moment in which we find ourselves, which is difficult. Before we kind of turn and speak to Spud, more specifically.
I think going off your point, Marty, at Spud, a lot we talk about the 2 feet of social justice, 1 foot being service. That's kind of the thing that people think about the most when they think about Spud. But the other foot is political action, organizing. And so there really is that component to social justice that is just what's going on in this country right now, taking social action and trying to enact political change. It's not just the service part of Spud that's the only important thing. It's the other foot of social justice that is probably even more important right now in this moment in our country.
Thanks, Eli. It's a good point to name those 2 pieces of work for justice. And Spud is sort of well known for, I think, the service side, the charitable side of our work at so many organizations. We'll speak more about that. But like you said, maybe in this moment, leaning on that other side of work for justice is maybe a particular urgency. With that, I appreciate, Catherine, did you want to speak?
Yes, I just kind of going off both of your points, Marty and Sly, is kind of focusing, especially as the lead community rising intern for next year, we are going to be focusing on the social justice aspect of Spud, and kind of supporting initiatives that are more on the charity side. But at the same time, I think that Spud is one of the largest student organizations on campus. So we, I think, have a voice and a platform to really be able to continue having these conversations and support students of color at Holy Cross. And not only that, but because of our deep connections within Worcester, and Worcester having such high populations of people of color and immigrants and refugees, I think it's really important that, within our work, we not only recognize kind of our own platform and our own place, but at the same time, we're, continuing to support all the initiatives, the many that Holy Cross and Worcester have already begun.
I think you're right, Catherine. We're in a place where we have, like you said, a real platform to move and to mobilize people on behalf of these kinds of issues. So I wanted to turn to a little bit more conversation again about SPUD. Some people listening may very well be deeply involved in this organization. Others may be new to the college or tuning in to sort of hear about what's happening at Holy Cross. So just wanted to talk with all of you about, refining that sense of like, what is SPUD? I can certainly say it stands for, it's an acronym standing for Student Programs for Urban Development. Started in the fall of 1967 and 68, so a time that's been compared to our moment often in recent days. But I want to open up to the three of you to say a little bit more about, what is SPUD, what do we hope people gain from their commitment to it? What do you think it is that we do, and what's the most essential part of what we do?
I would say, like the main, most important thing from my point of view is the forming connections and building relationships with the community in Worcester. A lot of us aren't from Worcester. I am fortunate to say I'm a Worcester native, but a lot of us aren't from Worcester. And to be men and women for others doesn't mean we go down and serve a meal at a soup kitchen once a week. It means being part of that community and showing the people of Worcester that we are here and we're there for them. We stand with them in solidarity in whatever struggles they may be going through.
And I think kind of speaking again to the 2 feet of social justice, we have a huge charity aspect, and we're lucky to be able to partner with so many amazing Worcester organizations and schools. And so that's kind of one component of it. That's kind of how we can daily kind of integrate our lives into Worcester, especially for those of us, who are from Worcester, and those of us like me, for example, who aren't. But I still, I am a citizen of Worcester, and even though we live on the Holy Cross campus, I think we're all so connected with, the community that's just right outside. And I think that, one of the large components of SPUD is not only kind of reflecting on the daily service that we give or the weekly service that we give, but also, why is there a need for SPUD? And I think that's really great because SPUD really truly addresses that and kind of makes us really reflect and focus on, okay, what are the systemic issues that maybe we can address, or what are some things that we can do to support the Worcester community, and not only just going into Service Soup Kitchen or going into tutor students, but why is there a need to do these things? And I truly see that, the Holy Cross community coming together to not only address these issues, but really kind of forge a future path that is one that is much brighter for the, kind of rising city of Worcester.
And just to bounce off of that, I think that for me, at least, one of the biggest takeaways that I have is that I feel like I gain so much from volunteering and from getting to know and to hear the stories of the people in the Worcester community. And so I think that we're so lucky that we have sort of a twofold mutually beneficial relationship with our SPUD sites. And I think that SPUD enables all of us to learn how to be better people, better friends, and just better members of society.
Thanks. I think you've kind of filled out that definition of what SPUD is, what it looks like a bit more, and you've done that very well. And I think I should acknowledge too that, again, for people who are maybe new to the context of Holy Cross, that SPUD is the largest student organization campus, and one of the primary ways in which students kind of connect with people in the city of Worcester at 40 different partnerships. But it's also not the only show in town, and that's a good thing. There's lots of options, right? Community-based learning is grown a great deal, and that's a way in which we, engage the city through specific sites related to our courses. And I think these programs complement each other. Sometimes people jump in through CBL, lots of shared sites, and then they participate in SPUD as well, or they stay involved at certain sites. But again, there's lots of ways to be engaged at Holy Cross. SPUD being, a really one that many have chosen. Usually each semester around 500 students taking part. So hoping that each of you could give maybe a more full sense of what SPUD has been like for you. So I know you've had lots of different experiences in Worcester through SPUD. So what insights, what memories, what connections have been for you from your time in SPUD? If you could share a little bit about that.
I think being a part of SPUD has really changed the trajectory of my college career. Coming in as a freshman, I wouldn't expect to have had or gained such a passion for social justice, which I learned through SPUD. And it has meant a lot to me just being from Worcester. I think a lot of times Holy Cross gets a bad rap from a lot of people in Worcester, seen as sort of a school just for privileged white kids to go to. But it's really a lot more than that if you see the sincerity that Holy Cross students bring with them to their experiences through SPUD. And so that's why it means a lot to me. But I've had so many great memories, and I was fortunate enough to build such great relationships with students at the Ascension After School program, which has been the site I've been volunteering at for the last 4 years. And I've formed such great relationships with them that I decided to keep working with them, and I was able to work with them at a summer camp over the summer and just sort of keep building the relationships that SPUD started for me.
Kind of a
That
similar.
was a little bit of a humble, sorry, I just wanted to mention, Sly didn't just work with the kids in the summer program. He actually started the summer program with other students. So, you really dove deep into that community, and I just want to acknowledge that that leadership that you took. So, thanks. Sorry, Catherine, please.
Oh, no, go ahead. Thank you. Sort of similar to Sly's experience, my first year, I volunteered with Worcester Refugee Assistance Project. And that was absolutely amazing. It was the first time I kind of had exposure really to the international world, particularly one that was focused on, helping migrants and refugees. And for me, I kind of came into Holy Cross knowing that I was interested in international human rights, but I wasn't exactly sure where that focus was going to be. And after really connecting with the kids who were really newly arrived into our country or really settling into Worcester and forming amazing friendships with them, from kids of all ages, from 2 all the way up to 18, that kind of inspired me even now in the career path I envisioned for myself. That led me to intern at the International Rescue Committee, where I also worked with refugees here in New York City. And I never would have kind of thought of that for myself if I hadn't volunteered with SPUD. And I've also made such amazing connections during my second year when I was a program director for Sullivan Middle School. And Sullivan Middle School is one of the public schools in Worcester, and it has a very large population of students who receive food benefits from the government. And there's also a pretty high percentage of students who had been or currently were homeless. And so for me, that was something that was really important to kind of connect with that aspect of Worcester, because that is something that we definitely hear of and we definitely see within Worcester. And so I worked within an English as a second language classroom. And so majority of the students were immigrants from South America, but there were immigrants, from all over. And so for me, it was really important that I was kind of not only going in as a tutor to help out with the teachers, but I was also there to serve as a friend and also as, kind of a role model for these students. They're students in 7th and 8th grade, and I think that's a really important time in kids' development, especially when they're thinking about, their future. And within Worcester, I think it's really important to realize, this is something that you can do and you can achieve. And I'm a college student helping you in middle school, but in a couple years, you're going to be the same college student that's going to be going into middle schools or serving other communities as well. And so there's so many different aspects, I think, to that part of service in SPUD. And I'm very fortunate to have formed so many friendships during the time. We'd be trying to get a math worksheet done, and then we'd end up talking about soccer or something like that. And so while we'd be, getting the work done, we'd also be truly having fun. It was really nice to be able to do that once a week.
Sorry, like I said earlier, I have been volunteering with Big Brothers Big Sisters for the last 3 years, almost 4. And that's always the highlight of my week. I just look forward to going and to seeing my little and all of her friends. And I think that the best insight that I have is that I have just grown so much and learned so much about myself and how to be a better leader, a better mentor, a better role model through my relationship and through the experience that I've gotten out of SPUD. And I'm just so grateful to have that connection and to be able to go back to the Canterbury School every week and see all of the kids. And so that's probably my favorite memory, but also, my insight.
Thanks to all of you. I know you've had lots of combined many years of that weekly commitment of being grounded in one community or another, sort of mini communities within the city at schools and at parishes and organizations, and that's grounded your work, which we're going to be doing collectively. So for those watching, we are. I advise the SPUD program. I don't know if I properly introduced myself, actually, as a chaplain at Holy Cross and advisor to SPUD, and work really closely with 8 student leaders called student interns for SPUD, 3 of which are with us in this conversation. But so we're going to be sort of picking up this ball and moving it forward come August together collectively, as has been done for now over 50 years. So I wanted to sort of look ahead and imagine, while there's so much uncertainty and we don't really know what the coming months will look like for Holy Cross, our task is to still have a vision and imagine what we hope we can contribute to the campus, to the community through the organization that we're leading. So I know you've already mentioned, many of you, sort of the importance of relationships and connections, and that SPUD is certainly seeks to provide support, but it's more than a helping organization, trying to ask larger questions. So given the fact that we're in a time of unbelievable uncertainty and unrest, what do you hope for in terms of our campus conversation and dialogue, our city, and for our organization that tries to bridge those communities together as we look ahead to the months and the year ahead of us?
I hope that we're able to find new ways to support each other through different panels and conversations about how we can grow and how we can learn to listen and to better educate ourselves in terms of being better allies. And I think that will feed into a lot of our community engagement projects, just because I think that the better educated that we are to help others, the better outcomes that we'll have. And I also think that in terms of, whether or not we'll be back on campus, one of my favorite parts of SPUD is that everyone is so creative and so passionate. So I feel like even if we aren't on campus, volunteers will still want to engage with their sites and find new ways to give back and to just be a part of SPUD, even if it's from a virtual setting.
I completely agree with Emma. I think that this is a really challenging time for everyone, and it kind of shows up in very different ways. And unfortunately, we kind of see this especially with our healthcare system, and particularly in the city of Worcester. And I think that this is a time where we really have to, remain kind of unified. And I think that not only as a SPUD community and within the Holy Cross community, but also to kind of our partners within Worcester. And I think that one of the things that definitely I can see us getting involved with, and that I would like to get involved with, is kind of concerns the fact that we have an election coming up in November, and we're still going to have an election in the middle of this pandemic. And while we may be remote and while we may be virtual, I think it's really important to stay connected. And Worcester is a community that has an extremely low voter turnout rate, even though it is the second largest city in New England, and that's for a host of different reasons. But there are initiatives within Worcester that, a lot of them are also student-led, that I think would be amazing for us to kind of connect with, to really, get the Worcester population not only registered to vote, but motivated and knowledgeable, and have an understanding of, what their vote means, and how, even just simple facts about how they can get to the polls and how they can get registered, in addition to really connecting with our spud sites as well.
I think Emma and Catherine make great points, and I would just like to add that with this lull in service opportunities, which is kind of the core of SPUD on campus, I think it gives us a great opportunity to reflect on our life experiences. I find myself reflecting on my privilege, especially with everything that's going on, and even with the pandemic, the privilege that I don't have to worry about some things that other people might have to worry about. I think this is a great opportunity that we can educate ourselves and look for ways to be better men and women born with others. And I hope that on campus that we can continue to promote social justice and maybe some unconventional ways. And I hope that we can make that second foot of social justice more apparent to people on campus.
Sorry, I was muted there. No, I appreciate all your comments and insights there. I agree. There's an invitation to creativity for all of us in terms of finding new ways to be engaged. I think the context in which we find ourselves in an election year, which Catherine mentions too, is important. We want people to be counted and for their voice to be heard. There's also, of course, a census going on, and there's lots of efforts in the city to make sure that, again, people are counted and that Worcester receives its fair share of allocation as a result. So those are really important things that could be done, from anywhere. While, one of the things I'm conscious of going into the year, and I'm excited to have all of you, really you 8 students, 3 of you are here with us, but you do the bulk of that work of moving this organization forward, and I'm just trying to support you as you go. But we are not the rest worlds and just kind of roll with our normal way of doing things. And in some ways, that's good. It's not going to be perfect, but we're going to be challenged to rethink things, prioritize things, and be honest and real about the situation which we find ourselves. So I appreciate that kind of challenge to just sort of throw out the playbook and see how we can, re-engage and be creative, and in any context, be who we say we are and who we want to be as a campus and as an organization on the campus. And with that, I want to acknowledge too, everything starts with where you are from. I mean, we started this conversation talking about, the current sort of movement around racial justice that's taking place. And I think we always have to start with ourselves. I know I'm planning to do some, really interior work to sort of look at those questions and educate myself more about what it means to be an ally, and to look at SPUD. I mean, let's be honest. SPUD, I think, it's not proportional in terms of its representation on campus, at least in terms of leadership. So our leadership does not represent, I think, the diversity that we have on campus. And, we've got to name that and look at that and ask good questions about how we can sort of move forward really together as a community that reflects Holy Cross. And I'm not sure we're there yet. So I want to, again, be honest. But I really appreciate everyone's willingness to be here and spend some time talking, helping some people who are on Facebook, connect with Spud and think about what the year ahead might look like. We have over 60 leaders already selected who've expressed, their desire to be a part of this effort. And yes, it's going to look different. It's going to be totally different, but I'm excited to work with you and so many, many others to see what we can put together. And again, not alone, because we have a whole campus of networks and organizations that we can kind of partner with. So thanks to each of you for sharing a little bit of your story, some of your experiences that have been important for you. And again, to Chris and to OSI for being willing to host us for a few minutes.